the Cal.
Yeah, so yeah, Gina, should just have everyone maybe I think there's a few folks that maybe haven't been on with each other, so maybe I'll just start and I'll be facilitating. We're going to do an informal call on climate literacy in California, so it's great, Amy, that you're here. So and I know you're in town right now too, so we'll talk about a big planned event that we had scheduled for yesterday, which actually didn't end up happening, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm Eric Havel. I work with Community Resources for Science and the Chabot Space and Science Center, doing professional development and programs for teachers and students focused on climate literacy building. And here in Oakland in the Bay Area, California. And maybe I'll pass it over to you, Amy, since you're in town.
Hi, Eric. I'm not in town. I drove back to
So you went
Visalia.
back. Okay.
Was canceled. I'm Amy Frame, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Tensions, a statewide organization also focused on environmental and climate literacy in California. And I'll pass it to you, Jim, since I know you are too.
Good. Thank you, Amy. Jim Callahan, Mobile Climate Science Labs. I got an echo here. I think I'm creating that. Let's see. So working in the schools, in science museums, and out in the community. So bridging all of those. And we can compare notes. Been in California doing this and a lot with Eric and also with Amy for 25 years. And how about try to go with people who bring the people who aren't here as often as everybody else, but here. How about Roberta? And second choice would have been Scott, but how about Roberta?
Hi, I'm Roberta Burns. I'm mostly a clean lurker these days, but I saw California on this call, and I've really been worrying and feeling for what California is going through. So I wanted to be here today. I work for the Kentucky Division for Air Quality, doing air quality education and the occasional climate education workshop as well. I will pass it over to my friend Karen. If she can unmute, I'm not sure.
She can. She just found it. Thanks, Roberta. Hi, everyone. I'm from Colorado, but I happen to be down in Florida today. So hello, and it is balmy down here, Gina.
Very nice. I'm jealous.
And Carolyn, have you introduced yourself yet? You're next.
Not today. So, hi, my name is Carolyn, she, her. I work for the CLEAN Institute, which is a female-led nonprofit focused on climate education and advocacy, focused in Florida, and I'm up in the Tallahassee office in the Panhandle. I am really excited that we have these college chapters of our youth advocacy program. And we're starting this semester on the FAMU campus. That's Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. And this is going to be our first HBCU. So I've been pushing for this for a couple of years. We finally have like the capacity to keep expanding, and yeah, very Florida specific, but I'm really excited in terms of like intersectionality and climate justice issues. Deborah, have you gone?
No, I haven't. Thank you. And I think I may have wanted to reach somebody you're connected with. Mostly I let Karen. I'm in kids science, kids education, kids publishing stuff, and some environmental journalism. Somebody here once mentioned, I mean, it's an election year, but Florida can be very restrictive about education and not necessarily supportive to educators. And I have contacts with library people in terms of information suppression. And a woman I used to work with, her dad is a First Amendment lawyer in Florida who provides free, journalists free legal advice. about reporting, and I thought that would be helpful for clean education. So mostly I'm joining here today to find out if I can share that and if that would be helpful, especially in Florida. So that's it.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat, and if you want to like make any like introductions, refer folks, um, please feel free. We just during our lobby day, when we had students from all over the state come up and talk to their legislators at the Capitol about various climate, justice and adaptation bills. We we had a Board of Governors meeting for the Florida State University system, in which they've removed Sociology 101 as a potential gen ed course and basically defunded campus DEI programs. Every single person there who was there to speak was against. I didn't mean to just mute myself there. But yeah, every person who spoke was against this, and they moved forward with it anyway. Yeah, and we haven't been really hit with it quite yet, but since a lot of the work we do is intersectional and justice oriented, who knows?
I would love to get your contact and maybe find out what you need and what he's offering, and maybe it matches, maybe it doesn't, but maybe it helps.
Absolutely. There's my email. Reach out anytime.
Thank you.
And I think maybe Scott and Don are left, and Gina. So Scott, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Scott Lewis here, Florida Climate Educators Network. I'm also from Florida, and yeah, dealing with some of these issues and working with, hoping to work with teachers to promote climate education here in the state. As you pointed out, there's some issues we have around that. So hoping to work on some of those solutions. So thank you. And I guess, Don, you're up.
Hi there, I'm Don Haas. I'm the Director of Teacher Programming at the Paleontological Research Institution in Ithaca, New York. And we're affiliated with Cornell, and I telecommute from Buffalo, where it's a beautiful sunny day. I will note that I think Saturday was our first mostly sunny day since December 15th. It was welcome. And the big stuff that's going on in New York is around, we have climate change education pair of bills, identical bills in the Senate and the Assembly. And for the last 2 Tuesdays, I've been in Albany for lobby days, and there's actually a group there today, but I opted not to spend 10 or 12 hours in my car this week for doing that. But we are, I think, up to 30 co-sponsors between the Senate and the Assembly, and I'm cautiously optimistic. It's getting a lot of press, including the New York Times last week. And I am hopeful that we'll actually change the world here. So it's very, very exciting. And I think I'll pass it to Gina. Yes.
Hi there. Yes, I was just I put the link to our telecon from a few weeks ago that discussed some of those updates that Don was just sharing a little bit more. We have a recording of that, so feel free to check that out if you're interested in that topic. And yeah, I am Gina Fiorelli-Duranlo. I am the CLEAN program coordinator and very excited to see you all today. I know, I'll share an announcement actually, while Rachel and Emily are still getting logged on here. Tomorrow CLEAN has a really fantastic webinar scheduled that I just want to call out. And it will discuss how to use the climate and energy literacy principles in your classroom and what CLEAN resources might be good fit for teaching those principles. So that's tomorrow at 4:30 Mountain, 6:30 Eastern time. So feel free to share that with any educators that you know. And Rachel, do you want to do an introduction?
Sure. Rachel Wellman. I am a program coordinator with FAU Pine Dog Environmental Education Center. Happy to be here. And we do have an announcement. I don't know if you guys have gone over announcements. I apologize for my tardiness.
I think it's okay to put, go ahead and do the announcement too, and then we'll go to Emily as well after that. So Rachel, go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm really excited, and Carolyn, you might have something to say about this, but this Friday is the, and Scott too, of course. This Friday is the Broward County Youth Climate Summit. And I know Scott and I will be present, and there's supposed to be something like over 200 students in attendance, and it's just going to be a really neat experience. And it'll be my first time being a participant of Broward County, because we are based in Palm Beach County.
Great. And I think that, Gina, does that seem like, I think that, oh, Emily, did you?
Emily, yeah.
Sorry, apologies for being tardy. Emily Snow-Brenneman, and I'm with the UCAR Center for Science Education in Boulder, Colorado. I'm a program specialist and the exhibit manager.
Great. So thanks everyone for being here today. We're going to jump into in just a minute, sort of some informal discussion about climate literacy in California. But are there any other announcements that anybody has?
Hi, Eric. I'm sorry I didn't get my right buttons. If it's okay, I'll go ahead and do one.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Thanks. And sorry, let's get the slide who I am here. Let's see. Announcing of in the repertoire in California, what we have of not only being in the schools, but being in the science museums, being in the public events, is the science museums help to bridge that, or the museums in general. So a new museum to our repertoire is we're doing presentations at the Charles Schultz Museum for the Peanuts. And they invite us because they do homeschool events. So they have like 100 homeschool families. So that's just another angle and another way in. I'll put the link to their museum into the chat, and that's kind of a nice new addition. That's going to be a nice personal one with families. So thanks.
Great. And anybody else have announcements for the group?
Actually, I do have one more announcement, if that's okay.
Rachel. Yeah, Rachel, go ahead.
I'm excited that FAU has approved, or our office has approved a 1 week climate ready summer semester for students within Palm Beach and Broward counties. It's now a fee-based program because our NOAA ELP grant had ended in September of last year. So it was a question, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to offer it, but I'm very excited to announce that we are offering it.
Great. Oh, and I see we have Christy Buffington, joining us here in a minute too. Christy, we're just wrapping up announcements and also introductions. If you wanted to jump in and just do a quick intro and any announcements. And welcome.
Steve Buffington in Fairbanks, Alaska, Trachyetta campus. I'll be having my camera off because I've got some field work that we're wrapping up from yesterday involving ice and permafrost.
Great. Well, maybe we'll jump into our topic, but again, you know, it can lead to other discussions. But what I wanted to do, the plan today, the reason we chose climate literacy in California was because we had a big event planned yesterday here in the Bay Area, which we call the Bay Area Climate Literacy Exchange. And I'll describe the event, and Amy and Jim were RSVP to attend. And then I thought I'd just show sort of a very quick truncated version of the slide deck that we were planning to use just to give you a sense of the event and some of the participants that were intending to come. But ironically, it was an atmospheric river that shut us down. So it was a climate related event that shut down a climate literacy exchange event, which was very unfortunate here in California. It was to take place at the Chabot Space and Science Center, which is up in the Oakland Hills inside of a redwood forest. And we get a lot of, I worked there part-time, and we get a lot of power outages as a result of trees falling on power lines. And that is essentially what happened. When we lose power, we lost power to one building, and then but it also had an impact on the water pump house, which basically shuts the whole facility down if there's no access to bathrooms and clean water. But we had about 140 participants that had RSVP'd, so we were pretty majorly bummed that it didn't happen. We did get the word out late Sunday night to folks, and as a result, only 3 showed up at the center on Monday morning, so that was a silver lining. But some drove all the way from Visalia to attend, so and other places. But we caught most of the folks at least, so they didn't have to trek up the hill to Chabot. But the whole goal of the event was to center climate literacy work because there's 3 districts in the Bay Area that have formal resolutions around climate literacy: Fremont Unified, Oakland Unified, and Berkeley Unified. The idea is to get those 3 districts together to share best practice, share ideas, have the teams kind of, go back and forth and learn from one another. And then it ended up, and we thought, an event of like 30 or 40 would be, fairly low key. But we put the word out to a larger swath of folks and, welcomed other districts to attend, even if they didn't have resolutions in place. And there was a lot of interest. We ended up having nine school districts express interest in sending representatives. And we also had some interest in student involvement. So we ended up opening up not just to teachers and administrators, but to students to have some voice in the event, and also community partners, various community partners that are involved in work like Chabot Space and Science Center. And the other organization I work with is Community Resources for Science. 10 Strands, a group called Stop Waste here in the Bay Area. East Bay is focused on waste reduction for the county. So, and do a lot of climate adjacent work. So anyway, that was the game plan. So I thought I'd just run you quickly through a slide deck for context, and I welcome both Jim and Amy to jump in, throughout and during the discussion, just because each of you have a lot of background in climate literacy, both locally at the state level and even nationally. So here's a sort of a truncated run through of the slide deck, and just stop me along the way if there's questions. Can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Looks good.
So that was the plan. I have a big climate, an all-day event starting about 9 o'clock yesterday, soft opening with snacks and things at 8:30, and then run through about 3 o'clock. It was a school day event, so teachers had to organize release time for this, and sort of our lead districts worked, our lead from Berkeley and Fremont particularly worked out sub plans and all that, so we could get teachers out. And then in the cases where students were involved, one of the teachers I worked with in Oakland had arranged a field trip, so was going to bring 25 of his students from Oakland Tech. And then of course a lot of the partners. And this was our game plan for the day. Couple series of keynote speakers, which we'll talk a little bit about, sort of climate specific stuff, and then some district level updates from those 3 districts that we were centering. Then we were going to roll into a series of small workshops, content workshops, then allow districts to get together just with each other to sort of talk about where each district was in separate spaces and breakout rooms. And these are in-person breakout rooms. I know we're all used to, the virtual ones. And then allow for some collaboration time at cohort levels. So like a K2 group, a 3-5 group, a 6 through 8, and a high school group. And then also get the students that were there to have their own breakout sessions. So the students could really just dig in with each other from the different districts. And then these were sort of, again, the districts that we were highlighting, the first 3 are the Bay Area ones, and then LA also has a climate resolution in place. And there's many across the state, and Amy knows this landscape better than me, that have either are very close to having resolutions in place, have environmental literacy or other, adjacent literacy efforts underway. But the 4 that have this sort of official climate ones are these 4. But we can speak to that. And Amy, again, feel free to jump in and give some context to that and fill out kind of some of the detail. But again, the idea here was to center the work of those first three districts. And then in partnership with community partners. So the two groups I work for, Chabot and Community Resources for Science, and Stop Waste, I mentioned, I sit on the board for that organization. They do waste diversion work, but a lot of climate connection. And then 10 Strands and Cali are kind of intertwined, and Amy can speak to that, but they were a formal partner in providing both some keynote resources and our food. So we had a budget for food for the event, which was donated through Cali. So
Eric, it looks
yeah.
like Scott has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Scott, go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, Eric, no, you may get to this, but I wonder if you could give an example of a resolution. Is that something that's binding in whatever teachers teach, or is that just sort of guidance and encouraging, or
I think
whatever?
it's more the latter, Scott, but in some cases, and that was sort of the tale of the three districts, if you will, where they are and how, quote, engaged and invested they are. And I can speak to that a little bit as we go through, but great question. But a lot of it is, and Amy, you know, jump in again here, like, is guidance. And in some cases, districts have put resources behind those initiatives. And I'll give some specific examples of that as we move through the three districts. And again, I've skipped a bunch of slides. So there was a lot more detail just because I wanted to leave room for conversation from everybody. But great question. And I think we can dig into that a little bit. Yeah, and feel free if I'm not monitoring the hands up, just jump in even auditorily if you want. Or Gina, if you see any hands, glad to stop. So introduction to the facility where we were, kind of things that Chabot offers. Chabot has a long history of climate literacy efforts. We had an exhibit up there called Bill Nye's Climate Lab in the early 2000s. We've done some extensive PD programs there that have been like funded by the Moore Foundation, by NASA, 5 years of bringing teachers together on a monthly basis to develop climate literacy. They have an active teen program, 25% of which 50 kids focus on environmental literacy as part of their experience, teen volunteer program. That's just the Chabot facility, not important. Then we wanted, to try and create engagement opportunities throughout the event. So we just wanted, this keynote was going to take place in one of our large dome theaters. So we wanted just folks to sort of share with each other. As we know, one of the advantages of in-person is all the informal things, opportunities you have to connect with people in person. So a lot more dynamic often than a Zoom environment. And then we had 3 keynotes planned. A student, Shreya Ramachandran, who was instrumental in getting Fremont's climate resolution passed. So she was going to speak to that. She's now a student at Stanford, but she was involved in this effort when she was in high school in Fremont. Andra Ugoyan from 10 Strands, Amy's colleague, was going to speak to sort of the state of the state, literally the sort of the ecosystem of California, environmental literacy and what's happening kind of at a state level, and maybe looking at some district work specifically. And then Geeta Dunhill is a professor at Cal State East Bay here in Hayward, city of Hayward, and she was going to speak to the intersection of climate education and climate science, and just doing some concrete examples of integrating climate science into educational programs. And I work closely with her on another project called Otaka, and she's been our lead climate scientist that has been helping with building literacy with our teachers. That was the first panel of keynotes. And then the second panel was going to be a district level update. So this kind of speaks, Scott, to what you were asking. And the idea was to center 3 districts. So I was going to speak to the Oakland kind of state of the state. And the one slide I included here was one of the big highlights was Oakland was the first district in California to formally pass a climate resolution about 5 years ago, I believe it was. And of the 4 that have them, my sense of it is actually the most under-resourced and able to implement the resolution. So there's not as much of a cohesive and effort at the Oakland level, just for lack of resource. There's about 40,000 students in this school district. I think Nate, one of my colleagues who was helping organize this from Fremont, told me that represents about 15 plus of the students in the Alameda County area. These three districts we're centering all happen to be in the East Bay of California in Alameda County. Then we were going to bring Berkeley, which has more programs in place, even though their resolution wasn't passed until 2021 after Oakland's. They actually just this year have a teacher on special assignment. Her name's Ellen McClure, who's driving climate literacy for the entire district. So they actually have a staff person, and they have funding to pay teachers, cohorts of teachers, to work together to build out so a K-5 cohort, a middle school cohort, and a high school cohort to build out literacy across the district. And the first year that they've actually invested in a teacher. Depicted on the left are some significant folks that are involved. A student in the jean jacket was involved in getting the resolution passed. I'm just calling out some folks. Martha Kane, dot shirt, is a retired teacher from the district who's been foundational in getting the Berkeley work done. Sarah Ranney is with the Sierra Club East Bay. She drives a lot of this work and works, in a concert with 10 Strands to build out climate literacy and support climate literacy efforts across the state. So that's kind of some highlights from Berkeley. And that's just sort of a little description of what they accomplished a couple of years ago. But it's active, very active, and I attend those cohort meetings on a monthly basis to support the work. And then Fremont, actually, of the three districts, even though it has the resolution was passed later than the others, has the most comprehensive program. So Nate Ivy from Fremont Unified drives this, also kind of a teacher on special assignment. But they have 4 cohorts, so a K2 cohort, a 3-5 cohort, a middle school and a high school cohort, and have actually figured out and aligned their curriculum with each of those cohorts to NGSS standards and adopted curriculum within that district, science curriculum specifically within that district. So they have a lot of resource, and he was bringing the most teachers to the event, so it was really unfortunate. He had about 20 teachers lined up and a few students coming to the event yesterday, but was excited because his team hasn't all met each other in person even. So it was just this opportunity to get out of Fremont and come up into the Oakland Hills and enjoy a day together. And then after that, we were going to roll into some content workshops. So this was just some of the names. You can kind of get a sense of what the focus was going to be for each one. Good news about this whole event is we have a backbone and a skeleton for a future event. So we are intending to push forward with a future related event. One of which would be this idea of some mini workshops. Some of these were going to be some of our partners. So climate justice was going to be offered by one of my colleagues, Helen, who works with Oakland Teachers Advancing Climate Action. How Green is Your School was going to be a student-centered workshop where students at Oakland Tech talked about how they're working to identify green infrastructure and program opportunities to improve their school. Climate action projects driven by Stop Waste. I was going to lead, and some of the teachers I work with are going to lead the bottom 3, a climate storytelling workshop, centering the idea of storytelling as a powerful way to talk about climate education and literacy. Wind turbines is kind of a hands-on iterative engineering lab, and then a basic Earth's atmosphere and climate lab with a lot of hands-on activities. So wanting to give our participants an opportunity to see the types of curriculum that they could be implementing and also just be learners themselves, just to experience climate literacy, in workshop settings. So they had to pick one. You can imagine folks are going to, I want to go to all of them, but they would have had to pick one. But we were leaving opportunity for the labs to be open throughout the event so folks could do a gallery walk and at least glean some of the other stuff that they would be covering. Then the latter part of the morning was going to be district level focus, right? So Fremont team gets to get together, talk, the administrators, the students, the teachers, any interested community partners that are really tied to Fremont, get together in a room. And this is where Nate was like really excited because he was going to have his full team there and be able to push forward. Berkeley do the same, Oakland do the same. And then that other category, right? Those other districts that sent representatives, get them all in a room together. So we were going to toggle into 4 or 5 breakouts depending on what that other group looked like. And we had a nice tool that Nate developed with prompts, so that you're seeing the prompt at the bottom. There was a written document that we created that was going to allow folks to kind of do some personal reflection throughout the day. Then lunch, and then afternoon was what I mentioned, facilitated cohort collaboration time. So those were the 4 groups we imagined. A 5th breakout would be the students themselves, just to allow them to have their own voice at the event and identify opportunities from their perspective. And then the idea was the second part of the facility collaboration was those students would join one of the other 4 cohort groups. Probably a lot of them, because they were high school, would lean into the 9-12, but they might have interest in the other cohort groups too. So that was the game plan, and I thought just data wise, you might be interested. What I mentioned early on was we, thought it would be an event of 30 to 40. We ended up with 140, and so that was really eye-opening in the sense that an event like this is of very much of interest and top of mind for folks in California. So that's, I don't know if you can read, can you all see, this is pretty small screen, but it's just kind of showing the attendees by role, right? So a large group of teachers. What's not reflected here is we polled the students separately. We had about maybe about 30 or 35 students involved. So this was the 103 adults that responded. So a lot of students, but also some TSAs, some community partners, administrators, and the like. A nice even distribution of grade levels that they taught. So that was nice to see. That would have been part of the experience. And you guys probably don't need to know about their lunch choices for the day. So yeah, I think I'll stop there, and maybe I'll just leave room for Amy and Jim to jump in. Questions. Yeah, anything about the event, or just climate literacy in general, and how some of our states can be helpful in other states, right? Driving these efforts, when we can see these models of programs and how things are being implemented, and also stumbling blocks, right? Like, so Oakland, even though it had the first resolution, doesn't have the resource, to your point, Scott, to really implement it. So it's sort of in name only in a way. I mean, there's a lot of great adjacent work happening, including this group I mentioned called Otaka, which is not district funded. It's funded by grants, and um, but it does involve about 30 or 40 teachers doing climate work within the district. I also work with a group of teachers, about 15 at Chabot, Oakland teachers specifically, and we focus on sustainability and climate literacy as one of the main points. I meet with them monthly. But again, that's funded through grants, not through a district, whereas Fremont and Berkeley both have staff. I think one of the keys in my mind is allocating staff time, allocating money to have a staff point person or a team of staff, even better, right? In the case of Nate and Ellen's teams, in those 2 districts, it's those people driving, but then they have money to support their teachers' involvement. And then like Nate, for example, able to pull 20 of his teachers out of the district on a teaching day and get them to come to the event. That's a huge resource and a huge loss, obviously, yesterday when realizing we couldn't do it. But anyway, that speaks a little bit to what you're asking, Scott, I think. And Amy, any context there and knowledge, welcome. Yeah, I agree, Rachel. A huge give to allow those teachers that release time, and it just shows to me like the buy-in at the district level. That these districts are supporting this work. Thoughts, questions, other folks that have run similar events. I do know, and Amy, again, you know this landscape better, but there's a group called Eclipse, which is doing state level climate literacy work similar to what 10 Strands helps drive. And they are hosting a virtual professional development and sort of informational webinar in the next, I think it's in April or May. That's driven by Kelly Lee, who's based in Irvine, California. So there's a lot of state level work, a lot of synchronicity and work happening. I think a lot of us are realizing where we fit in the ecosystem and how we can best support each other. So like this Bay Area event, we were aspirationally calling it Bay Area climate literacy, but we're really focused on East Bay, you know, and for those of you that know the Bay Area, it's 9 counties. It's a pretty big geographic area. And it just happened that the 3 districts that have the initiatives are all East Bay, all within 1 county of the 9. But that being said, there's some great work happening like in Santa Clara County, in San Francisco, in other districts in other of those 9 counties. So, and that's just the Bay Area landscape, right? Then you've got the rest of the state. So a lot of good stuff happening here.
Well, Eric, I've got a few questions for you about this. One would be just, why do you think you got such a big number of people there when you were, you know, exceeding expectations, which is a good thing, but do you have any ideas about why that suddenly jumped up with the numbers? And then question about, you know, attending the workshop, what were the needs that teachers expressed, and also the students, what kind of needs did they express after you met?
Yeah, I'll show you we had 4 questions we asked about comfort level and certain content. I'll show that. I'll go back to that survey. We kind of teased that out a little bit. But to your first question, there are a lot of districts that are aspiring to get resolutions on the books across the state. So even though there's, you know, a few that have them formally, a lot, as I mentioned, are doing climate literacy work and are even ahead of the game and probably already honestly doing a lot of climate literacy work, even if it's not a resolution per se. The other exciting thing at the state level is there's a newly adopted state bill, SB 285, which requires climate literacy in science education across the K-12 environment. So it's now mandatory that and so we've got these teachers and administrators coming to organizations like CRS and Chabot, and I'm sure Amy to 10 Strands, like, what do we do? We're supposed to be implementing this stuff. And the new part of that is the K-5 space. NGSS and already covers a lot of climate literacy, you know, within the secondary environment and ecosystems, but then the new thing is this, especially this K-5. I'm realizing my Mac is telling me I'm on low power. I may have to go desperately find my plug in a minute. But just to finish that thought off, so I think that's driving, Scott, a lot of interest right now too. So that state level thing. So there's this, you know, grassroots interest in doing this work, and then there's a state level mandate. So you got a lot of things converging, and then of course we know that the climate awareness is only increasing, you know, year by year. If those of you that follow the Yale study on climate change and where people are on the spectrum of denying all the way to sort of completely dedicated, there's 6 different levels, and that just keeps skewing further and further towards the alarmed, you know, part of the spectrum. So I think it's on the public mind and educators' minds just writ large. So really quickly, actually, I'll hold on sharing these slides so I can go get my power cable. And
Eric,
but
I could jump in a little bit if you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
mind.
thanks, Jim. I'll be right back.
Certainly, I was certainly looking forward to this event quite a bit, and particularly when at least 40% of the people were in school teachers in East Bay. I'm among them because I do things actually in the schools in East Bay as well. That giving voice to them, hearing from them, and having some dialogue then with the districts on that, particularly from the point of view of maybe a starting point, because the people are going to be there. Who are the teachers who are actually teaching this? Who are getting it done? Who are finding a way? Whether or not there's a resolution, whether or not they have support, they're doing it. And how are they getting support? How are they getting encouragement? How are they not getting pushed back down, right? What's going on? What do they got? What are their successes? That's a kind of discussion that I think is really important to look to have happen here. Among the ones, as I was mentioning, is, and I guess I have to follow up with the Fremont people. I don't know how to reach all the teachers because we didn't get to go yesterday, is one of the ways we can highlight their work is the city of Fremont does a big event each year for Earth Day, and Mobile Climate Science Labs has the main stage for that event. We are the most popular, the biggest part of it, and we always share. We want to highlight what Fremont is doing on that and do that with the Girl Scouts and connect on it. One of the questions I would ask is this going on? But to say, and if it is going on, ask each of the districts, what will you do about this? Okay. Are there schools that are having elective classes on climate change, whether it be science, social sciences, connection, action, but ones where the students can elect to be part of it. It's not mandatory, because we've found that that is a very successful approach. It allows the teachers to take initiative. It allows the students to do things. They can be selective in what they're doing stuff, and it definitely it's a very successful way to do that. Who else is doing that? And then I would want to ask the districts, are you going to have a problem with that? So I'm not going to name the East Bay District, but we've had problems with a district that when teachers take initiative, even their staff take initiative and do things, the district has crushed it. Even when there is resolutions that they are to teach climate change, one of the arguments is, well, if you can't teach it in all the schools simultaneously at exactly the same level, then it's not equality, and we can't support that. We can't have you going out there and doing things in one school if you can't do it in all the schools. Okay. And the other argument was, well, you're a program that believes that climate change should be taught in elementary school. And we clarify, we're talking about introducing the science and the stuff that will later, if you need to teach it in middle school, that's fine. But NGSS allows you to teach it earlier. But it was no, we at the time it was, we won't allow it if you try to bring it into elementary school, because that is just, there's all these arguments against doing that. Those have gone out the window. But anyway, I mean, a lot of this is bringing forward the teachers and let them have a voice and to do things and to work with the district. We're very interested to see where things are going on all this. Do we eclipse that? There's what happens from the top, but what's happening from the ground up. Anyway, there was really an important event, and I'm really so glad that you were pulling it together, Eric.
Yeah, and it's not for naught, because we feel like we have a backbone and a skeleton for a future event. And in some ways, just like anything, we will be able to iterate and add to it. Maybe be more inclusive, or be more intentional about. If we were trying to figure out the intersection between the students and the teachers specifically, and whether those should be. I really like the idea of a merged event. However, there's also a lot to be said when you get cohorts separate and then ultimately bring them together. So I think Chabot is certainly supportive of hosting again, if that's the right spot. I mean, that, it's interesting because the Bay Area, it's up in the Oakland Hills, beautiful place, a lot of great connectors, and yet meeting in a public transit kind of, accessible place can also be really important for events like this. So anyway, it's not for naught. We are intending to push forward in the future. But not sure when. If it's this year, might have to wait till summer or next year, early next year.
And Eric, if I could follow up with a question of, is there a way that we could keep alive until the event happens again, whenever, beginning to bring forward who are the teachers that are successfully doing this, who are the leaders, so they can be identified and supported and recognized, maybe on CLEAN, and we do things. I mean, because right now it's anonymous. Who's doing the work?
Right. I think to that point, and I was hoping that might be one of the things that emerged out of this event, was this 9 counties representatives, right? And that we could develop essentially like this, a professional learning community for the Bay Area around this, and figure out, very much like Excel's, Gina, like, you've got these focused, targeted groups working on this stuff. Same thing, and then ultimately, best of all worlds, we find a way to get it funded, right? And so or like what I was mentioning, you've got districts supporting the work internally. That one of the big things about grant funded PD for anything, as soon as the grant disappears, the project gets mothballed, and so it's like, how do you keep the work going if districts, to your point about that, I can imagine which district you're talking about, but that you getting the pushback from the district in various ways, but once there's like those teachers that were going to attend yesterday, they were supported by the district. We didn't have to stipend them for their time, so to integrate it into district infrastructure and operations, that to me so it becomes a really true partnership between districts and nonprofits. And then you don't have to grant fund everything, and then it doesn't disappear when the grants go away. So so I wanted to leave space for folks, but if I don't see a hand, what I wanted to share was back to Scott's point. So we asked 5 questions, and again, you may not be able to see these, so but you can probably see the graphs, right? So I'll read them. How comfortable are you with teaching climate science? So folks skewing to the right on the graph, but level 1 through 5. Very similar with how comfortable you're teaching with things like climate anxiety, social emotional connections to climate change and concerns. Again, skewing right, but not completely comfortable, right? So some middle and upper. The third question is about climate justice and environmental justice. Again, skewing right, but looking for some opportunity to do some literacy building there. And then age appropriate. This speaks to Jim's question about where do you introduce? And I had a good conversation with my colleague Nate from Fremont, because like Jim said, like the kids know the term climate change from a very young age and they're concerned about it. But in NGSS, weather and climate come up as topics, but the combination or the climate change addition doesn't necessarily until you hit middle school and you start talking about systems and looking at interdisciplinary ties to climate change. So I'm of the mind of yeah, there's an opportunity to introduce it and get students thinking about it, but the underpinnings, the foundations in math and science and STEM, and even in the language arts now with and history and social science with the emerging emphasis on climate justice, all those underpinnings are the tools the students are going to need when they hit that secondary environment. And so I argue, yeah, the same as you, Jim, there's an opportunity to do it right at the elementary levels. In some ways, it's kind of like what we've talked about before. If you can lead with action and lead with solutions and lead with describing and showing how young students, when they're worm composting, when they're recycling, when they're choosing to walk to school, all these things that they do are for the good of the planet and the good of the climate. And it just reinforces them as agents of change and giving them a pause rather than just feed the climate anxiety side of them, especially at a young age. And I think that's where some of the concern comes when we talk about our youngest learners. And I 100% get that.
Yeah,
You
if you
know,
don't mind, and sorry, Karen, if you mind, this is a question, basically, this question to everybody. Given the data we have in front of us, right? We don't have them just the teachers describing exactly what they do, but when they're in the 3, 4, and 5 category, they're saying, "Are you comfortable teaching this? Can you do this?" I think that's pretty indicative that they're teaching it. You don't say, "I'm comfortable and I've never done it before." So, like, who are these teachers? What are they doing? What kind of support we give them and recognition we're giving? I mean, it's clearly there. Those identifying. You've got teachers that are teaching it one way or another, and that's great. But to make them, to eclipse them, I'm sorry to put that one to, like, that they don't count. It's what the district does that counts. That's not good for the district. Okay, sorry, Karen. You did it the right way with your hand up.
I'm really stuck, Eric, grieving with you that you got bumped out of doing this yesterday. And I can't imagine how disappointed all the students and teachers are, because it was an opportunity for them to actually get together in real time. And I hate to see it bumped off till next year.
yeah, and the only reason I say that, and I told, and I got, it was like Sunday night, right? We're like literally texting and emailing everybody, and luckily of the 140, only 3 showed up at the center because we got the blitzkrieg, we got the whole thing out there in time. But the challenge, like for Nate specifically at Fremont, is he had arranged all that release time, right? And to replicate that would be so hard.
All
So
those
I was talking,
arrangements are just
yeah, I was
devastating.
talking to my 2 supervisors at my 2 part-time job, my 2 jobs, right? And they're both very supportive. And we were imagining how, to your point, Jim, could you keep the momentum alive this year in some way, which I think we will as colleagues. And maybe there's like a smaller scale event so we just don't completely lose the momentum. And then when Nate feels like his team's ready to engage, because he was also looking at it temporarily for a school year, like these are my very specific objectives for my team in February of this year of their school year, right? So he had a pretty specific game plan. So that's why he needs to step back. He definitely wants to engage, I know, but it's just now a question to your point of how and what makes sense. But I think I 100% agree with what you're both saying. Like, how do we keep the
And
momentum going?
the other thing that you've articulated in your musings today is the importance, as you think about how to restructure this, or how to structure it for the first time, as it turns out, is that how that could serve as something that could then be expanded.
Yeah, and even
That's a
replicated.
real challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about Jen Crester and her Youth Climate Summit program that's just ballooned out to be a national or international program. And if we could create models, collaborate, you know, the question did come up certainly in this day and age, is it going to be remotely accessible? You know, can we bring people in from other places? And we were like, gosh, this is a huge, way bigger than we thought. We just can't, aside from video recording, like the keynotes, to bring people in Zoom environment in a meaningful way that's inclusive of everybody is hard. You know, I've only seen it done well in a couple instances where you have the tech set up, where you have really strong facilitation that can bring in the virtual participants, but really not be overburdened with managing the tech, because you want the people that are there to be present and engaged. So it was a great question. So we had to kind of sort of like parking lot that one.
The things that you've said that I would want to put on the parking lot to be considered, from my perspective, is the multiple nodes and figuring out how to populate multiple nodes, and using, as you suggested, public transportation to get places that are really more accessible to everybody by transporting them in on public transportation from various places in the area.
Yeah, and there's
but-
some centers that facilitate, like I can think of, like there's a, not that this is important for all of you being national, but there are some very like BART or rapid transit, Laney College or Oakland Museum are like right at a station, you could imagine, right? So I agree.
And I'm wondering whether Amy has some thoughts from the perspective of being a potential future node or whatever, from this experience that you're thinking could be relevant for your groups.
And Don also, maybe that
Yeah,
might put us at time. No, yeah, between Don and Amy, yeah.
Yeah, I'll defer to Amy because the question was directed to her. So.
Yeah, just, you know, in short, I think what's really different about this project is that the group is ready to dive in, even though they don't have a perfect plan. Like you said, these are the actual teachers that are doing it. The whole structure is arranged so that they're talking to each other about what they're doing and not being talked at by anyone who isn't doing it, you know, and this model has already caught on. So my relationship with this is Nate Ivy, who was planning it with you, Eric, is the co-lead of the District Innovation Hub, and Callie, the California Environmental Literacy Initiative. And we also have Ellen from Berkeley in that group as well. And there's this already being replicated in the South. So we have a different county office of ed with a bunch of districts down there. And I think that just the simplicity and the urgency of it, you know, is what caught on, because no one is expecting perfection or any kind of perfect plan. Like, let's just talk about who's doing it now. And we have a lot of districts that are passing resolutions and things like that, but that doesn't provide funding, guidance, anything else. We don't have a statewide framework for climate literacy per se. We have NGSS, but this is a scientific issue, and we don't really have like a solid framework around the other side of this too. And so I'm just hoping that one can emerge from this. And I'm sure that this event will happen again, more or less as planned, not just this year, but other years and all throughout the state too, because people are just ready to dive in. That's all I'll say on that. And, you know, our role in being a statewide network is to know who those people are and help them get the resources. I think, you know, everything is free and, you know, open source and not meant to be one size fits all, but no one should need to start from scratch if this is a successful model, you know. And I will just put a plug that next week, I don't know, Eric, when you like signed up for this, you know, date or whatever, but I will be here with Andrew and some other folks from 10 Strands talking about the data we do have on district implementation of climate literacy throughout the state, as well as board resolution staffing and some of those other things. And it's just an epic data project that we're happy to share with you what we found so far.
That would be
Okay.
great. Yeah.
That's
thank
me.
you.
Done.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on the idea of, doing sort of a rain date or whatever on Zoom or whatever platform, of all of the places in the United States that should be able to do a hybrid meeting well, it seems like the Bay Area ought to come through for you.
True, true, very
And
true.
I'll note that one of the meetings that I've been involved with that I think handled that well was the ocean, the impact meetings for the International Ocean Drilling Program and at AGU headquarters in DC in summer of 2022. And they have the facilities at their DC headquarters. I don't know what kind of facilities they have in San Francisco, but they'd at least be a good point of contact because they know how to run those meetings, and they do have a San Francisco presence. So that's a thought. And I have to run to another meeting.
So maybe Scott will give you the last word today. And thanks everyone for engaging in the conversation. I think we still learned a lot. And Amy, I'm very hopeful that, yeah, we will push forward. Appreciate you all being here. But Scott, last thoughts?
Well, Eric, actually, there was another question. I had looked at the time for the thing, but Amy
go
had
ahead.
mentioned that people are ready to jump into it. I wanted to know who were the people? Were you talking about bottom up or top down or both? Or why is that motivation? I'm trying to contrast that with maybe some of the folks that are what's going on in Florida. So I'm trying to think about that a little bit. So appreciate any thoughts you might have about who those people are.
Stay tuned for next week. We'll let you, we have a long list. It's both. I mean, we have the policy. We've been working on the policy side for a long time, and getting people to actually do it, has been harder because it's hard to change the school system, So you really need both.
Yeah.
And also middle, I don't know, Eric, your organization works side by side with the
Right,
districts. I mean, those partners are key districts.
right. I
You
feel
know,
like, yeah, 100% agree. That middle piece is really nice. It's the cohesiveness between the big and the grassroots, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you everyone for and Karen, yeah, for your thoughts, and just everyone for being here. And yeah, to be continued. Look forward to other states, hearing the stories of other states too. State of other states.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you,
Okay.
Eric. It's great
Yeah,
to see
thanks,
you.
Gina. Bye all.